Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and we are back with our top 100. We are doing 70 through 61 this time. Another 10 games as we work our way towards our top 50. Of course, the 50 to 100, they don't count at all. They're terrible games. They're great games. They're great games. Honestly, kudos to the Dice Tower. That's the Dice Tower joke. The idea of making every game that's not in the top 10 absolute and utter trash. Also, kudos to the Dice Tower, because I don't think I'd be doing a top 100 without the inspiration from the Dice Tower. And coming up soon, they'll probably be running their, usual end-of-year campaign. Make sure to check out that and support the Dice Tower if you get any benefit from the Dice Tower, which I guess is a great time to segue into the fact that I'm also currently running my support drive. I'll link to it down below, but there's a video where you can check out where you can win a whole bunch of games and or just support the channel. If you get value from the 700 videos I put out every single year, any support is appreciated over on Ko-Fi, over on Patreon, whether a recurring donation, one-time donation, and of course you are going to be eligible to win various giveaways and games if you join as well. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into our top 100. Basically, the short notes as far as how I make this video every single year is I de-rank all my games so that I'm coming in a little bit blind. Then I rank everything into 5s, 4.5s, etc. And then I use PubMeeple to go ahead and rank within the rankings to give me the order that I want. And finally, I manually massage it to make sure it lines up with where I think it should be, because PubMeeple is good, but it's not great. It's a good tool. It's a good tool, but I have that final control over how things go. To that end, let's go and start off with our number 70. Our number 70 is actually, in fact, let's take a look over here. I'm not 100% certain. I think we have 2 that are new to my top 100 in this particular grouping of 10. I think we have around 20 or so total, so I guess this would be about average. Anything that's more than 2 would be below average. Anything that's less than 2 would be below, other round, above average versus below average. Anyways, number 70 is going to be one of the games that is new to my top 100, and that is Wondrous Creatures from Bad Comet Games. Wondrous Creatures is fantastic. I played Life of Amazonia from Bad Comet, and I thought it was good. In fact, I'm pretty sure I haven't reviewed this yet, but there will be a review coming soon, and you know how I feel about it already. But Wondrous Creatures is fantastic. I played Life of Amazonia from Bad Comet. I thought it was very, very good. I enjoyed it a lot. I played Wondrous Creatures, and I thought it was even better, giving me strong vibes of Terraforming Mars, very, very different gameplay, but some of the feelings, the strategic feelings you have there, the desire to accumulate all these cards, the inability to actually play all those cards, there's so many ways the cards will come together, the fact there's a map presence and a board presence, that's the same thing, a map presence and card and hand management. There's a lot going on in Wondrous Creatures. It's a worker placement game where you place down your little workers, effectively, on these 2 tile spots to earn resources, using those resources to go ahead and play cards, and using the combination of your cards engine and how well they synergize in order to drive you forward towards victory. There's a lot going on here, and a lot of replayability, because there's so many different ways to pursue the game. It's very satisfying. It's very satisfying. Definitely check out Wondrous Creatures. It's my number 70. Coming in at 69, we have Trailblazers. This is new to the year last year, and is still here this year, because Trailblazers is still an excellent game, both solo and competitively. In fact, there's multiple ways to play it solo, there's multiple ways to play it competitively, all in this small box. And if this small box isn't small enough, they have a little carabiner kind of situation box. They have a small little travel box you can put your cards in if you go hiking. So there's tons of ways to engage with this game. Trailblazers from Bitewing Games is easily my favorite games from Bitewing Games. They recently hit the scene with a lot of well-produced reprints and new games, all giving you easily accessible rules, great graphic design and presentation, and then just good games to follow up with them. Trailblazers is going to be my favorite from the group, coming in at my number 69 over here. The game plays in 15 to 30 minutes, and it gives you a lot of decision space as far as how you line up these cards. Designed by Ryan Courtney, it takes the system he created in, was it called Pipeline? It's been so long. I think it's called Pipeline. Is that the original name of the game? I think so. He had Pipeline, he had a variety of other games that use that system, but to me, Trailblazers is the one that gives you the most accessible gameplay as you try to figure out how these pipes, or in this case, paths, all line up to give you as many points as possible. It's simple, it pushes you a little too far, you're always like, I think I can get more done than I actually can. You can't get enough done, but it's very, very satisfying, very easy to teach, and plays well at a variety of player counts. This plays 1 to 8 players, and it plays 1 to 8 players almost equally well. Obviously, whenever you get to 8 players, there's inherent downtime, but this is a simultaneous play game. Great game. Check out Trailblazers from Bitewing Games. Coming in at number 68, we have one where I think this is dropped from last year, actually. This is one it's been in my top 100 since it came out. Since the game came out, this has been in my top 100, but it has bounced around a little bit, and right now it's seeing a bit of a drop, and that is Dune Imperium as my number 68. Dune Imperium is a well-loved game, and you're like, what about Uprising? That means Uprising's higher on... No, I haven't played Uprising. I haven't played Uprising yet. I'm sorry. I meant to. I own it. I just haven't gotten to it yet. And nor have I played the newest expansion either that just came out for Dune Imperium, but Dune Imperium itself is an excellent worker placement deck building game that I still very much love. All jokes aside about how the top 50 are garbage, this is an excellent game. I still enjoy playing Dune Imperium a lot. I do find that there are other deck building worker placement games that I go back to more and more, and this one isn't it. This is one that I'm always happy to play. I always enjoy it. It is well loved. It's better ranked than the one that I rank higher, but that's other people's opinions. My opinion is this is a number 68 game, a great game. It has gone down a little since last year. I don't know how much it's gone. I didn't check beforehand, but I'm pretty sure it was like slowly on the rise. And then this past year, I don't know, it doesn't excite me as much. But again, to be very clear, as much is very, very subjective when you're talking about the number 68 game over here. This is my number 68 game, Dune Imperium, epic worker placement and deck building, giving you a lot of interactivity. The expansion is a must. The Rise of Ix expansion definitely elevated it significantly for me. In fact, let's stack these in reverse order over here. But yeah, that's Dune Imperium, my number 68 game of all time. Coming in at number 67 is going to be, like, every once in a while as I do these lists, I see people commenting, I have 2 of those, I have 3 of these. This next one, very few people have. It's not a well-known or well-loved game. That's not true. It's not a well-known game. It is a well-loved game, I think. I think it's well-loved enough, and I find it incredibly quirky and amazing, and I'm looking forward to the second edition of it arriving, because I'm still holding on to my first edition as of right now, because Quodd Heroes, this giant, heavy box, coming in at my 67 over here, 76, 96, 67, Quodd Heroes from Wonderment Games is crazy and zany and oh so satisfying. This game gives you competitive, I think cooperative. I don't know if I've ever played a cooperative, but I think there is cooperative play, and the solo play as well, as you try to figure out how to get your quad, these little dice-like figures, the kind of dice figures that are going to roll around the board. You're trying to get them from point A to point B. Generally, there's a lot more going on to it. There's pick up and deliver, there's racing, there's all these kinds of things happening, but you're going to have your quad that has their own abilities. You're going to be gathering various gear and equipment over the board, and then you're trying to figure out how to tumble them in different ways through a degree of action programming. If you enjoy games like Robo Rally, this has that kind of gameplay where you're trying to plan out what you're going to do, but then what other players do along the way, or how the board shifts and evolves, will change what you think is happening versus what you thought would happen. So it has that craziness, that zaniness of action programming, but it does so with a bajillion powers and abilities. The second edition was even better, streamlining some of the rules, adding a full solo play scenario booklet. I'm hesitant to put this on top, but I guess we're going to do it over here. But no, I can't. This is too heavy. This box is way too heavy. But Quodd Heroes is a delightful game, full of charm, full of craziness. It is not the most popular game. If you have a chance to play this, definitely check it out. I think you will probably, well, it depends on who you are, but if you like games that have a degree of craziness, if you like games with powers and abilities, then definitely check out Quodd Heroes. I'm going to rotate that so you can see the title. Definitely check out Quodd Heroes, because I think Quodd Heroes delivers an excellent experience that there are other games that kind of do the same general thing, but I don't think any of them do it quite the same way or as well as Quodd Heroes. It is one of my favorite in that action programming craziness genre. Really enjoy this one. Check out more about it. I have reviews on the original edition. I have reviews on the second edition, although again, that hasn't delivered yet. I have a review on the prototype, but Quodd Heroes is my number 67. Coming in at 66, we have one that actually left my collection at one point, but I've gotten it back and it is continued to hold up for me. This is Kingdom Builder, a game I played for the first time. Oh my gosh, when did I play this? I want to say I played Kingdom Builder, talking about games that have lasted my collection for 10 years. I want to say I played this in 2013. I want to say. I could be wrong. I did a local meetup. This is before I ever had a game group. I got into gaming. I was having trouble getting games above 2 players. But then I did a local meetup or whatever, meetup.com, whatever it is. They had a meetup at the library. This lovely fellow named Christian taught me the game. I loved Dominion at the time. This is designed by Donald X Factorino, the designer of Dominion. And I was open to it. When I played it, I loved it. I proceeded to get all the expansions for it. Then Winter Kingdom came out, and I thought Winter Kingdom was the better game. I still think Winter Kingdom is the better game. I think it is less accessible. It's one of those games, it's one of those trade-offs where you're trading a game that is partially better in some ways, but also it's hard. I think this is the better game now, but it's one of those weird things where I'm debating the thing that's going to be played more, that's more accessible, that's easier to table, versus the game that to some extent did do some things better. Hard decisions to make. In any case, Winter Kingdom replaced Kingdom Builder for several years, and then I missed Kingdom Builder, got back Kingdom Builder, got rid of Winter Kingdom, and so far have no regrets in that decision. So that's kind of where we are on this. As far as what Winter Kingdom does, what Kingdom Builder does, is you are building out a kingdom. You're going to have terrain cards that define where you can place your settlements. The problem is those restrictions are very restrictive because you always have to place a settlement next to another settlement if you are able to do so, which is where the powers and abilities come in, because very often the point scoring is going to want you to spread out over the map in different ways, and if you're always forced into adjacencies only, you will limit where you can go and what you can do in the game. So the game is all about being constricted and finding your own unique ways out of those constraints to be able to drive forward. And that is a challenge challenging puzzle that is oh so satisfying, and if you have all the stuff, or even all the stuff in the big box edition, it makes it even more satisfying because there's variety and premium stuff and all these fun things. It is an easy game to play. It is very variable, which is something that I enjoy in games that I play, and that is why Kingdom Builder continues to remain a game that I am always happy to table, always enjoy, and is my number 66 game of all time. Which brings me to my number 65. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I always do this. My number 65 over here is Istanbul. Istanbul is delightful. I love Istanbul, and like Kingdom Builder, this is a game that kind of at one point entered my collection, then left, and then came back. Although this one was different. You see, Istanbul base game I think is great, but it's the expansions that took it to the next level for me. It's the expansions that gave it that extra level of variety and bite to the game. Well, I don't know if bite's the right terminology. Let's go with variety. Variety and depth. Variety and depth to the game, that the base game on its own was a solid 4 out of 5, and the expansions elevated it to a solid 4.5 out of 5. It's again, like Kingdom Builder, it is an easy to teach, easy to play game. I value those things in games so much, especially with more and more games that go in and out. As much as a game like Food Chain Magnate can be immensely satisfying and crunchy and fun to work your way through, and there are some heavier games higher up my top 100, nonetheless, something that is accessible and easy to teach and play has so much merit. There's enough. Both these games are games that are very similar weight class. They give you a lot to think about and a lot to try to challenge how are you going to find your unique pathway forward in the game, but they do so without giving you that brain burnery amount of meltdown where you're like, what am I even doing and how do these actions connect to each other? Which again can be satisfying. I'm not saying they're not. There are some more of those coming, but Istanbul is top tier as far as how accessible versus how deep the game is. There's 2 expansions for it. Honestly, I haven't even played the second one. I played the Mocha and Bakshish expansion. I haven't played the, I think, Letters and Seals is called, but it's in this box here. I just haven't felt the need to play it because I enjoyed the expansion, which someone in my community would ask, well, if the first expansion made the game better for you, why wouldn't you at least try the second expansion? And the answer is because I'm happy right now. I'm content and I'm happy and I don't feel the need to, but maybe one day I will dive into, I assume one day I'll dive into the expansion, the Letters and Seals. In the meantime, Istanbul is a game of trying to manage kind of worker placement, but chained worker placement. You can move around the board, but you have to drop off your assistants as you go, but then you can only take an action if you drop off or pick up an assistant, which means as you create a pathway, you're trying to think through how you're going to chain back to that pathway to pick up that assistant later. Effectively, every action you're trying to map through when do you want to take the first stage and the second stage of that action. You don't have to, but then you're wasting your time. So there's a puzzle of worker placement as you look at the board, chart out your actions, think through who's going to be in your way at any given point, and then try to figure out what you're going to do to try to earn those points, those gems, before the other players do so. Very satisfying. Expansion, Mocha Bakshish adds a lot of depth to it, adds a little coffee. Every game's better with coffee, who are we kidding? That is Istanbul, my number 65. My number 66. Am I writing my 65 or 75? No, 65. What's 65? I should write these down. This was saving me a lot of this, like, wondering. My number 65. My number 64 over here, is Things and Rings. This is the second one that is new to my top 100, new to my collection this past year. Things and Rings is incredibly satisfying. This is a game from Peter Hayward from Allplay that just gives you a satisfying deduction puzzle, with my main complaint being that one person doesn't really play, they guide the game. That's not that much of a complaint, except when you get to 2 players, because I do find that most of the time when I'm playing it, somebody wants to be that person. Somebody wants to be the guiding player. So as long as that continues to happen, it's not really a complaint. At 2 players, though, it means you can't really play it except you're playing cooperatively, which frankly I find to be the less satisfying version of the game. But if you have 3 or more players, Things and Rings gives you a deduction game of trying to figure out what the patterns are. What's the rule in common? If you ever played a game called What Goes Through the Green Glass Doors, that's Things and Rings times 3, effectively. Well, times more than 3 because you have more varieties to it, but the basic idea is trying to find a pattern. This thing falls here, and you're creating little Venn diagrams. You can create little Venn diagrams on the board, and then cards are going to go down into separate areas of the Venn diagrams, and you're guessing where the card goes. If you're right, you go again, and your goal is to empty your hand. If you're wrong, you draw another card. Meanwhile, the guide of the game is trying to guide you. You place that card in the blue ring, actually it goes in the yellow ring, or maybe it goes in no rings at all. And then as they move things around, they're effectively giving you information. They're giving you patterns. An axe didn't go into the blue section. So the blue section is obviously not something that's made of wood. Blue is an attribute, yellow is related to the word, and then red is related to the place in society. So if I move the axe from the blue section, then clearly the thing in blue is not made of wood. I say made of wood because one of the cards is made of wood, which granted you do have a slight edge if you know some of the cards, but there's so many cards that I do find so far, at least, that knowledge of the game doesn't give you that strong of an advantage. But it's very fun, very challenging, deductive game where you don't even have to totally solve the problem, you just have to figure out enough commonality that you're able to piece together the patterns better and before other players. That is Things and Rings, my number 64. My number 63 is one that's been on this list for a very long time, is Tak. Tak is one of my favorite abstract games, still delivering one of my favorite abstract games. In a world full of excellent abstract games, and there are a lot of excellent abstract games out there, Tak is incredibly clean, incredibly mean at times. I don't know if it's mean, it's abstract, it's cutthroat. Abstract games tend to be a little more cutthroat, that head-to-head approach where you're both vying for the other player. But Tak is like very chess-like. It's very old school in the type of game it is, which makes it all the more surprising that it's actually from the name of a book series. It's from In the Name of the Wind, I believe, Patrick Rothfuss, if I'm not mistaken, a book series that hasn't finished, and thus I haven't started reading it yet because I refuse to start a book series that hasn't finished, usually. There's times I've made exceptions, usually it's out of ignorance. But anyways, Tak is a delightful abstract puzzle. It's very easy to teach. It teaches sequentially, which makes it easy to get people up and running. And then there's a lot of strategy as far as what you're trying to do. It's a great abstract. It's one of my favorite clean abstract games, as evidenced by its position in my top 100. Coming in at number 63, am I doing this right? No, that was 65, 64, 63, 63 over here, 65, 64, 63, 63. Again, I'm doing this all the time. Now 62 is Wild Assent. Wild Assent has dropped a little bit for me over the past year, but it still is an excellent game. I think this is just one where I'm kind of in that weird limbo space where I still kind of want Levon Rising to be able to play it that way, because I want to dive into it again, but I want to wait till Levon Rising comes out to be able to play it again. But that means that I haven't been tabling this for quite some time, so I remember having an excellent time with Wild Assent. I remember enjoying it. I remember going through the campaign a few times, but nonetheless, it is one where I'm kind of in a limbo state. And if you follow this particular situation, we are all hoping Levon Rising shows up, and none of us know if it will. And so this will probably sit on my shelf for several years until I either decide to play it again as is, Levon Rising shows up, or I just give up entirely and move on from it, which can happen. As a campaign game that I have gone through and finished, I'm not averse to moving on to other campaign games that I'm not giving enough time. But Wild Assent is a delightful campaign game that gives you a bunch of hunters, and you're hunting these creatures, the seekers I think they might be called seekers. You're seeking these creatures in the wilds to either hunt, capture, to sell, to get their body parts, and to use them to drive your own encampment forward. And if you're like, that sounds a bit like Kingdom Death Monster, this is Kingdom Death Monster Light. I say that having not played Kingdom Death Monster, but people who have played both games have said it's in that vein. You have a bunch of people, you're trying to keep them alive, you're trying to hunt these creatures, the creatures are trying to kill you, and you need to ultimately stay alive, and you're going to harvest everything you possibly can to work towards your advantage in the game. But it gives it to you across 10 missions. You play 10 missions, it's each mission roughly is going to be 60 to 90 minutes, making it an absorbable, consumable campaign game that you don't have to give up, the next 7 months of your life to play. You can play this over the course of a month or two. I mean, you can play it over the course of a week if you're that kind of player, and get an excellent experience out of it. I find the character progression is incredibly satisfying. I find the creatures, I have a lot of challenging to try to actually get through them. Wild Assent is one that I thoroughly enjoy the overall gameplay that it presents, and that is going to be my number 62. My number 61, and the last for this particular video, is Root. Root is an excellent game of high degrees of asymmetry that is one that is... It's so satisfying. Now, I think I've talked about this already in my top 100, but I play less area control games than I used to. My group dynamic has shifted a bit. I used to play a ton of area control. Now I play infrequent area control, but Root is still one that is incredibly satisfying when you get to the table. The high degree of asymmetry, each faction providing its own unique take to the game, and the way you mix together different factions means you always have a different puzzle, which for me is one of the strengths of Root. There are people who like to play the same factions, even the same core factions, and to learn the ins and the outs, and that's not the way I play this game. To me, I want to see 4 new factions at the table, a combination of factions that we have never seen together. With honestly, they have enough factions. You can probably do that. Unless you're playing Root a lot, you can very often have a unique combination of 4 factions that you have never really played together, or maybe 3 factions and some hirelings. There's different options to you in this game, but the factions all give a unique way of how they operate. They all follow some basic tenets, some basic rules, but they have slight differences to them, what they do, where they earn extra points from, what their sequence of their turn looks like, and what you're going to do to fight against them or fight as them. And those challenges make Root a game that it continues to give tons of playability to it, because every time you think you've established a pattern, you can move on to the next combination and figure out, oh great, well now the moles are in play. How well do the Irie handle the moles when you also have the scoundrel in play, and the vagabond, not scoundrel, the vagabond in play, and as well as throw in the Marquita cat. When you have those combinations of people at the table, what's going to happen with the game? Every combination is different. Every combination is a unique challenge to figure out what your pathway is playing as that faction to deal with the other factions and to win the game. Root is an incredible experience, lots of expansion content for it. It is a game that is well loved and well respected base game alone. For me, base game alone is not where the game thrives. For me, adding expansions and variability and mixing up the gameplay patterns, that's where Root shone for me. That is my 70 through 61. I'll be back tomorrow with my 60 through 51. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.